The regular beeping of the heart monitor was the sole sound in the sterile hospital room as I clutched Hannah's hand. My beautiful 8-year-old daughter lay peacefully with her small hand in mine. Still unresponsive, encircled by tubes and wires resembling a modern. The experts indicated that the subsequent 48 hours would be crucial following her abrupt condition. I collapsed due to what I discovered was an uncommon strain of meningitis. I had not departed from her side for 3 days. I must leave, Grace, Oliver remarked while straightening his tie in the window's reflection. Mom's 60th. The birthday is a significant milestone. And the entire family will attend. His voice had that recognizable tone of finality that I had been accustomed to. Accustomed throughout our 12 years of marriage to the one that tolerated no dissent. I was incredulous at what I was witnessing. Hearing that Oliver, your daughter, is in a coma, the doctors have stated that she is in critical condition. It is likely to remain that way for at least several more days. He interrupted to check his phone, stating, "The doctors are here. What difference will it make if I am absent for 2 days? My mother has been organizing this event for months. And my throat is sore." My anxiety intensified as I observed him methodically packing his overnight bag. A precision I always esteemed. But now it seemed unsettling. "I need you here. Hannah requires you," I said with a slap in the face. He halted momentarily, and I observed a fleeting expression on his face, perhaps doubt, but it dissipated just as swiftly. "It is only for a few days." Hannah would not even notice my absence. "You are, as usual, overreacting." He leaned down to kiss my forehead, but I looked away. "I'll return before you realize it." The door clicked shut behind him. I was alone with the blaring monitors and my comatose daughter. I caressed Hannah's pallid cheek. Reminiscing. Last week, she was whirling in the backyard, her brown curls glinting in the sunlight as she displayed her new acquisition. Dancing routine. How rapidly things transformed that evening when I slumbered in an uncomfortable hospital chair. My phone vibrated with photographs from Oliver's mother's party, where he was beaming, a wide champagne glass held in hand, encircled by family in a single image. His arm was around his cousin Daisy, both laughing at a shared joke, which made me feel nauseous the following morning. Hannah's condition deteriorated swiftly, her oxygen levels declined. And physicians. I hurried in and out of the room, repeatedly calling Oliver, but each call went directly to voicemail. With shaky hands, I contacted my sister Aora, who arrived shortly thereafter. Her expression, marked by worry, inquired, "Where is Oliver?" In a fatigued state and amidst Hannah's serious condition during his mother's birthday celebration. I responded with a hollow voice. Hannah would remain oblivious to his absence. But Aurora's demeanor became resolute. She remained silent, merely drawing up a chair near me and grasping my free hand in hers. We sat together while the time elapsed as Hannah's life diminished, despite the physician's utmost endeavors. At 3:47 p.m. my vivacious daughter breathed her last breath, and I cried until my voice failed, grasping her still warm body. Aurora hugged me, her tears cascading silently as the physicians uttered words forms were signed with trembling hands. However, Oliver's phone remained unprocessed, went directly to voicemail that evening amidst a haze of loss and anger. I composed a note. "Don't ever find me." I left it on our bedroom dresser, prepared a bag and traveled to stay with Aurora the following day, with my family's assistance. We interred Hannah. The small, private ceremony rendered Oliver's absence palpable, akin to a physical injury, a profound betrayal. It profoundly transformed the fundamental perception of our identity as I stood by my daughter's grave. Observing the afternoon, the light formed elongated shadows across the freshly turned earth. I made a vow not merely to Hannah. To me, this was not the conclusion of my narrative, it was the inception of a new chapter. I created a new one based on my own standards. But I was oblivious to the numerous unexpected components. The weeks following Hannah's burial unfolded in a haze of sorrow and apathy while I remained in Aurora's presence. I spent countless hours in the guest room, staring at the ceiling while clutching Hannah's favorite plush giraffe. The phone remained powered off, as I could not endure the prospect of seeing Oliver's name illuminate the screen. Aurora informed me that he had. Ultimately, I made numerous calls after discovering my note. She had responded only once. His voice, taut with restrained wrath, expressed disbelief that it would occur so swiftly. He warranted an opportunity to elucidate while she perched on the edge of my bed, sifting her fingers over my unwashed hair. I informed him that he had his opportunity when our daughter required him the most. I later discovered that Oliver had spent that time critical days not only during his mother's birthday celebration but also during an unplanned gaming excursion with his cousins at a nearby casino. While our daughter was dying, he had been placing bets and consuming champagne. The realization dawned upon me. In my chest, a weight akin to a stone. My parents urged me to pursue legal action, although I could not endure the contemplation of it. Rather than seeing him in court, I redirected my concentration towards the routine tasks of deconstructing a life, terminating joint accounts, forwarding mail, and filing for divorce via my attorney. Each step resembled traversing through dense muck. However, I persisted, if only because remaining stationary caused greater pain. Aurora's residence transformed into my sanctuary. Alongside her 2 adolescent sons, typically engrossed in their own realm of video games and academic turmoil, they exhibited a tenderness that elicited new tears. My eyes would find mugs of hot chocolate left outside my door, or they would silently tidy the kitchen when I made an effort to do so. Prepare to cook, and I find myself seated on the floor, inundated by recollections of preparing pancakes with Hannah one morning about 6 o'clock. Weeks following Hannah's demise, I had a genuine need to shower in order to regain a sense of cleanliness as I stood beneath while under hot water, I recalled what Hannah mentioned during her previous dance presentation. She had missed a step, stumbled, yet persevered. She informed me later that Miss Andrea stated, "When you misbehave, go with a smile, mommy. Continue dancing. The performance concludes only when you choose to end it." In the afternoon, I opened my laptop for the first time since the events preceding Hannah's illness, during which I had been employed as a physical therapist specializing in pediatric rehabilitation. My inbox was amidst a deluge of concerned letters from colleagues and clients' families. One email distinguished itself from Dr. Rodriguez. Former mentor Grace inquired whether you are checking emails. You are prepared. A position awaits you at the Children's Rehabilitation Center, where we are establishing a new program focused on grieving. Counseling, in conjunction with physical rehabilitation, is essential for children who have lost siblings. Take all the time necessary. The door remains perpetually ajar while I sat, perusing and re-perusing her words till they became indistinct through my tears at the contemplation of engaging with youngsters once more instilled both fear and a sense of purpose inside me. Hannah had cherished her visits to my workplace with pride, informing patients about how her mother assisted children in dancing again. That evening I dined with Aurora's family for the first time. I spent time pushing food around my plate instead of eating alone in my room. Nephew Tyler abruptly requested, "Aunt Grace, could you assist me with my physical therapy exercises? My knee has been causing me pain." After soccer practice, I noticed 3 sets of eyes observing me intently, while Aurora began to quiet him. However, I found myself nodding in agreement, my voice hoarse from disuse, stating that I could assist with. A minor incident occurred, nevertheless. A change transpired the following morning when I responded to Dr. Rodriguez's email indicated that I am unable to return to work at this time, but I may be able to commence volunteering for a few days each week. When I pushed send, I observed that a wedding photo remained on my laptop's background. Oliver and I exchanged radiant smiles, blissfully oblivious to the eventual outcome, while I altered my actions with shaky fingers. A photograph of Hannah dancing in the backyard, her expression radiating enthusiasm and determination. The performance is not concluded until, I muttered, caressing the screen softly, "You have decided it is over." Identified a support group for parents who had experienced the loss of children. The meetings occurred at a community center nearby. During my initial meeting, I remained silent, absorbing the narratives shared by others. A few streets from Aurora's residence, one mother, Maria, who had lost her son to leukemia, alleviated my sense of isolation in my grief. 5 years ago, her discourse on acclimating to her loss and rediscovering purpose while maintaining her identity was profound. She conveyed that the memory of her son remains vivid, emphasizing that mourning lacks a definitive timeline. After the meeting, she pressed a card with her phone number into my hand, signifying that it should not be forgotten. As I walked home beneath the evening sky, I experienced a sensation I had not felt before while learning to carry them with me differently. There had been a tiny glimmer of hope since that terrible day at the hospital. Happiness is not yet attained, but there exists a glimmer of potential that I might get it somehow. I sought a method to continue dancing as Hannah had instructed me. 3 months following her demise, I began volunteering at Dr. Rodriguez at the Children's Rehabilitation Center introduced me gradually. Initially aid with administrative tasks, but thereafter, being in the presence of children, hearing their laughter, and observing their determination commenced the healing of an aspect within me that I believed was irreparably damaged. There was one patient in, specifically a 12-year-old girl called Sophie who strongly resembled Hannah. It originally left me speechless. She was recuperating from a vehicle accident that had resulted in the death of her younger sister. During her treatment sessions, I observed glimpses of the same fierce spirit I had witnessed in my daughter when assisting Sophie. During her workouts, she abruptly wept, exclaiming that everyone advises her to be resilient. However, at times she feels otherwise. I just have an overwhelming urge to do things. Is this wrong? ECTS. Is that inappropriate? I took a seat next to her As I sat on the mat, my heart raced. This was the first instance in which a patient had openly confronted grief with me. No, Sophie, I said, softly, it is not incorrect. At times, exhibiting strength entails allowing oneself to experience emotions. All emotions, including fear, were present as she gazed up at me, her eyes wide. Did you? Experiencing the loss of someone alters your understanding compared to others. I acknowledge this. Suppressing my tears, I reflect on how much my daughter Hannah would have adored you both. Sophie and her favorite color, purple, transformed the session into something above mere physical therapy as she focused on her rehabilitation. During our exercises, we discussed topics such as loss, memories, and the challenges faced on certain days. Dr. Rodriguez observed from the hallway and subsequently summoned me into her office. In the workplace, Grace remarked, I have observed your interactions with Sophie. Have you contemplated this? Integrating your physical therapy experience with bereavement counseling. We have observed an increase in situations similar to Sophie's. Children confronting both bodily and emotional trauma require an individual who genuinely comprehends their situation. The suggestion resonated with me. I recently started sharing my personal story in the support group, finding strength in helping others. Integrating the same healing methodology with my professional endeavors seemed appropriate. Elements of a puzzle finally aligning. I enrolled in a grief counseling certification program, attending nighttime sessions, classes, while simultaneously volunteering during the day, were formidable challenges that compelled me to tackle my personal sorrow in novel manners. While every challenging session and tear-laden task appeared in honoring Hannah's memory, Maria from the support group developed a strong friendship throughout this period. Indeed, mourning lacks a definitive timeline. Certain days still incapacitate me, reminiscent of discovering Hannah's school art efforts, a neglected folder, or passing by her preferred ice cream parlor. Although I now possessed the resources to manage these instances and individuals. After a particularly intense therapy session with Sophie, I realized one evening that I had not returned to the cemetery where Hannah was interred since the funeral. Yet an inexplicable force drew me to the location. The sun adorned the sky with hues of pink and gold, Hannah's preferred colors, while I sat before her gravestone and spoke to her. All aspects concerning Sophie, my academic pursuits, and the extent of my longing for her. Today, I endeavor to derive significance from this anguish. Dear, I murmured my desire that you would feel pride. Softly, the breeze stirred the flowers I had brought, and for the first time, I experienced a sense of tranquility at this location, alleviating the oppressive burden. The grief persisted, yet it had evolved into a shape that might assist others. Upon exiting the cemetery, my phone vibrated with a message from Aurora. She had been organizing her garage and discovered a box of. Hannah inquired if you would want to see her dance performance recordings together. Only if you are prepared. A few months prior, this would have caused me to spiral. However, now it brings tears to my eyes. I experienced an additional sentiment, a yearning to commemorate the happiness Hannah had infused into our lives. Indeed, I responded, I would like that. That night, Aurora and I sat together on her couch, watching Hannah swirl and leap across the screen. We grieved, but she also chuckled at the recollection of her pre-performance anxieties and her persistent insistence on donning her tutu. Aurora mentioned during a tranquil time that brunch occurs on performance days. You know, Hannah, you should take pride in utilizing your own suffering to facilitate the healing of others. That exemplifies true strength. As Hannah took her final bow, her grin was dazzling, and I am discovering the essence of strength. Not avoiding pain, but letting it change you into someone who can help others. As I went home that night, I reflected on the distance I had traversed from the bleak days in the hospital and the associated anguish. Had not diminished precisely, yet it had metamorphosed like a substantial stone becoming. I gradually transformed into something significant. I was no longer merely existing, I was thriving. Seeking a method to commemorate Hannah's legacy by assisting others in navigating their own challenges, I was unaware of the unfolding journey of life. Was poised to provide me with another unforeseen challenge that would evaluate all I had assimilated regarding healing and forgiveness. Unforeseen arrival of spring that year, accompanied by an unforeseen sensation of rejuvenation. I have been facilitating my own grief support group for 2 months concurrently with my professional responsibilities at the. I had eventually relocated from Aurora's residence to a rehabilitation center apartment. Compact yet adorned with meticulously selected mementos of Hannah. Her artwork displayed in frames on the walls. And her dancing shoes suspended nearby. On that Saturday morning, with the window capturing the morning light, I resolved to take my coffee to the park adjacent to my flat. Hannah's preferred season was when the cherry blossoms adorned the landscape in delicate pink hues. Prompting me to engage in this activity more frequently. I frequently sought locations and times that linked me to her memories without succumbing to despair. I was absorbed in contemplation. Observing a small girl on the swings, who appeared to be just slightly older than Hannah, I was interrupted by a familiar voice. Utterly unprepared, I turned to discover David Carter. Standing there, resembling almost precisely his undergraduate appearance, except with dark hair, was now speckled with gray at the temples. My first love, the boy I dated for 3 years prior. Life sent us on divergent paths, surprising David and me. My voice sounded steady. It had been almost 20 years. He grinned, and I observed a fleeting image of the boy I had known at 17. But who is keeping track? His demeanor softened as I listened. I am deeply sorry for your loss, Grace. The sincerity of his voice conveyed true concern. Unexpected emotions welled in my eyes. I had improved at managing condolences. Yet, hearing it from someone who knew me prior to Oliver, prior to motherhood, and prior to loss resonated differently. Would you like to sit? I inquired, referring to the vacant place on the bench. As he positioned himself beside me, I observed, he was not wearing a wedding ring. Over the following hour, our talk flowed as if the years separating us had vanished. David recounted his past, noting that he had been an architect and married at an early age. His marriage dissolved 2 years prior when he uncovered his wife's prolonged infidelity with his. The most distressing aspect, he remarked absent-mindedly, was not the betrayal itself. As he rotated his coffee cup in his hands, he realized that I was laboring late into the night to construct our ideal home. They were constructing their own reality unbeknownst to me, and I found myself disclosing information regarding Hannah's illness and Oliver's abandonment, my journey through loss and healing. David listened with the same calm intensity I recalled from our past. During college, he assisted me in navigating challenging decisions regarding my future. He consistently showed remarkable strength. A person I was acquainted with said gently, "Even at that time, I shook my head, expressing my lack of strength. I am currently learning to manage everything differently. Our talk was interrupted by a message from Aurora. As I prepared to depart, David hesitated, reminding me of our lunch plans with Grace. I understand this may be premature, but would you be interested in having coffee later to converse further? My heart experienced an unforeseen reaction. David, I am still digesting a great deal, he grinned pleasantly. Here is my card. I am currently engaged in a project located just a few blocks away. The offer remains valid at any time. Even if it is merely his pals that evening. I found myself prepared for my support group meeting, contemplating David and his capacity to listen attentively, without any pretense, to rectify any issues. It contrasted sharply with Oliver's persistent disregard for my emotions and his assertion that I was excessively. During the group session, one of our younger members, Rebecca, expressed her emotional struggles, feeling bad about being attracted to a new individual 2 years following the death of her husband from cancer. She revealed that it feels as though she is betraying him, twisting her wedding ring, as if she is not grieving appropriately if she is capable of feeling. As I listened to the group present their viewpoints, I unexpectedly shared something I had not intended to disclose. A knowledgeable individual recently informed me that mourning lacks a rulebook. I responded that we are all merely attempting to navigate our way back home. Life and its trajectory vary for each individual. Later that evening, I positioned myself while on the balcony, I examined David's business card in the gentle twilight light, and recollections of our college days surged forth. Sessions that evolved into profound discussions about life and his steadfast support when I chose to change my. He made a bittersweet yet mutual decision to terminate the relationship upon his acceptance into a physical therapy program. While enrolled in a doctoral program nationwide, I received a text from Sophie's mother containing a video of Sophie engaging in her activities. As I observed her solo steps in therapy, witnessing her unsteady yet resolute advancement, I reflected on my own experience. His progress may have involved embracing unforeseen deviations in the journey, characterized by slightly shaky fingers. I stored David's number in my phone. I was not prepared to contact him yet. But for the first time since losing Hannah, I experienced in a fleeting moment of potential. I dreamt about Hannah that night while we were in the park. She danced among the cherry blossoms, exclaiming, "It's acceptable to be joyful again, Mommy," her smile beaming. "I desire you to dance as well." I awoke with tears on my cheeks, though they were not fully. As I prepared for work, I found myself humming one of Hannah's songs. Despite feeling melancholic, the melody did not overwhelm me as it previously would have. Rather, it felt a gentle reminder that although some songs conclude prematurely, new ones may commence unexpectedly, which I did not anticipate. I was unaware that my unforeseen reunion with David would result in issues I could never have anticipated. Expectations compelled me to confront aspects of my history that I thought I had permanently abandoned. It took me 2 weeks to message David. 2 weeks of carrying his business card in my wallet, extracting it at random intervals to caress the surface. Embossed letters accompanied my simple message, "Coffee sounds pleasant. Grace." His reply arrived within minutes. We convened at a tranquil cafe adjacent to the rehabilitation center after I had just concluded an emotional experience session with Sophie, who successfully traversed the full length of the parallel bars, her eyes reflecting triumph. It evoked Hannah's drive to such an extent that I required a moment to regain my composure before entering the cafe. David was already seated at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. "I recalled your order," he remarked. A faint smile accompanied a double-shot latte with cinnamon. "After 17 years." He shrugged, indicating that certain memories endure. The initial coffee evolved into weekly encounters when David presented sketches of his ongoing projects, and I became increasingly engaged. I shared narratives of my patient's improvement, and he listened with sincere curiosity, posing insightful questions. In my grief counseling practice, there was a therapeutic quality in being with someone who was acquainted with me prior to my loss. Transformed my existence while totally embracing my identity one evening as we strolled. After coffee, David paused under the cherry trees in the park. "Grace, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice. Despite accepting a significant project in Chicago that will require 6 months of work starting next month, I felt disheartened. I attempted to conceal it. That is great, David, a remarkable opportunity. Contemplating a rejection, I inquired, why would you do that? He turned to confront me, his countenance fervent. Because for the first time since my divorce, I feel just where I need to be. The burden of his words lingered between us. Part of me desired to run, however. It seemed premature and overly complex, nonetheless. Another aspect was present, growing stronger each day. I wished to remain beneath the cherry blossoms with him. David, but my phone rang, interrupting. Before I could articulate my thoughts, Aurora's name appeared on the screen. I apologize. It is my sister. I must take this. Aurora's voice was strained with anxiety. Grace, you must. I encountered Daisy, the cousin of Oliver, at the grocery store. I felt tense when I saw the person who appeared in the party images from the night Hannah died. Intoxicated, Grace began recounting the events of that night at the casino about Oliver. Aurora paused. There is more to the incident than we were aware of. I listened as Aurora recounted what Daisy had disclosed regarding Oliver's premeditated intention to go prior to Hannah's illness and his embezzlement of funds from his. He used his mother's birthday as a pretext to access funds from the family company to settle gambling debts. I stepped into the casino's high roller suites one last time before everything crumbled. My hands trembled as I ended the call with David. He observed me with worry and, without speaking, guided me to a nearby bench to converse silently. The entire narrative was revealed, encompassing not only what Aurora had conveyed to me but also all other details. Years of Oliver's insidious emotional manipulation, wherein he caused me to doubt my own sentiments. His progressive withdrawal from our family life. Even before Hannah's illness, he had been remote, vanishing for hours with ambiguous justifications persist in my mind as I recall wiping away furious tears, contemplating whether I had recognized the indicators. Previously, I might have been able to shield Hannah from David's insistence. He stated resolutely, "Do not subject yourself to that. Oliver's decisions were his own. You were an exemplary mother to Hannah. How can you? I recognize that you never encountered her. As I observe your daily reverence for her memory. In your professional endeavors, particularly in assisting others in their healing processes." He paused before adding, "Grace, I want to clarify that my presence in the park on the day we reconvened was unintentional." I regarded him with confusion. "I had observed you there on multiple occasions observing the children at play. I recognized you. I wanted to approach you immediately. But I observed that you were engulfed in grief. It did not seem appropriate. So I chose to wait. Every Saturday, I go to the park, wondering when you might be ready for a conversation. Your revelation astonished me. Some individuals merit patience." He grasped my hand tenderly. "I am not inquiring for anything you are not prepared to relinquish. I want you to understand that I am present in whatever capacity you require at that moment." As I observed our intertwined hands, I sensed a transformation within me. It was not the fervent exhilaration of youthful romance we had experienced. Neither the camaraderie experienced in college nor the acute need for security I had felt with Oliver. It was distinct, more subdued, profound in comprehension, and communal. Experiences of loss and rejuvenation, nonetheless. As I sat there contemplating what I had. Upon learning about Oliver, a persistent concern emerged in my thoughts regarding whether he had been desperate enough to embezzle funds. He was contemplating departure prior to Hannah's illness. What other actions could he have taken? And what other secrets remained concealed? The sun was setting, sending elongated shadows across the park when I made a decision. "David, prior to delving into the nature of our relationship, there are matters to address. I need to resolve questions from my history that require answers." He nodded in agreement. His eyes conveyed a willingness to assist, offering whatever was necessary as we retraced our steps. Upon returning to my car, I experienced a dual sensation, a sense of lightness from having shared my burdens and a weightiness from the awareness that confronting the past may reveal things I was unable to address. What I failed to recognize was that my quest for Responses would guide me along a trajectory that would challenge not only my recovery but also this delicate new. The manila envelope remained on my coffee table for 3 days. Starting with David, I summoned the guts to open it after discovering Oliver's larceny from Aurora. I had engaged a private investigator. I never anticipated being an investigator, nonetheless. David had offered to assist with the expenses. Although this was a necessity I had to undertake. To independently examine the contents of the envelope evoked a visceral reaction, as it included bank statements and references to a casino. Emails, receipts, and images indicated a pattern of dishonesty that extended deeper than I had anticipated. Oliver had not only squandered his family's finances via gambling, but he had also been leading a dual existence for years. I cannot believe it. I informed Maria during our weekly lunch that we had initiated this ritual months prior, deriving strength from our shared experiences. In our healing journeys, you were not blind, Grace, she asserted resolutely. You were merely trusting. There exists a distinction, nonetheless. The connections persisted. The investigator discovered that Oliver had led a clandestine existence. He established Hannah's insurance policy 6 months prior to her illness, which coincided with the onset of his increased embezzlement activities. His family's company strongly impacted me, causing bodily distress. I contacted Aurora in distress, contemplating the possibility that he might be aware of Hannah's predicament prior to her illness. What if he observed indications and failed to inform me? Do not pursue that line of thought. Aurora, avoid becoming obsessed with hypothetical scenarios and instead focus on what you are certain of. I was certain that the email records indicated Oliver had been contemplating his departure months before Hannah's. The sickness had already begun a relationship with someone else. Not his cousin Daisy as I had initially presumed, but rather a casino hostess. He had encountered it during his regular gambling excursions. The revelation disoriented me, resulting in my absence from work for 2 days. Since my return to the rehabilitation center, my grief support group has observed my preoccupation during sessions. Sophie occasionally inquired about my well-being during her therapy sessions, to which I sometimes responded affirmatively. Seeking terminology that facilitates mutual strength entails acknowledging our vulnerabilities and soliciting assistance. In the evening, I contacted David, who promptly arrived with comfort food. As I presented the investigator's findings, my reliable confidant began to synthesize the information with his architectural intellect. I had not examined these dates, he remarked as he spread the documents across my dining table, including the life insurance policy. The heightened gambling activity coincided with the arrival of his new fiancée, beginning around the time his family's business secured a significant development deal. What are you implying? I believe Oliver intended to orchestrate something more substantial than merely fleeing. These behaviors do not reflect impulsive errors, they appear deliberate. The word instilled a sense of dread within me. I contemplated Oliver's insistence on attending his mother's birthday celebration, which he had neatly altered. He would have refrained from using his phone during Hannah's final hours had he been aware or had he acted intentionally. Contemplate this at this moment, I stated, distancing myself from the table, that I am embarking on a new life, undergoing healing, and assisting others in their healing process. I cannot permit him to ruin that as well. David embraced me, and I allowed myself to be held. You are correct, he stated, gently. You have constructed something exquisite from profound suffering. Yet grace is. There is additional information on Hannah's situation that you should be aware of. I withdrew my gaze, gazing up at him, and inquired, why did you not intervene? David's eyes softened about the Chicago project because it occurred 17 years ago. I erred by allowing my work ambitions to distance me from the person I loved when I encountered you in the park. On that day, I vowed not to repeat the same error, valuing honesty in my actions. His voice resonated profoundly within me. Here was a man who had confronted his own past errors and comprehended regret. In my kitchen, amidst the remnants of my ex-husband's treachery, I resolved to seek redemption. I want the truth, not for vengeance but for Hannah and myself. He assured me that he would assist me at every stage after David departed that night. I occupied Hannah's room. I had designated one area of my new apartment as her space. with her books and toys neatly arranged. I caressed her ballet shoes, remembering the relentless practice she had put into them. Her feet were aching. Still, she persevered. "I won't give up either. Sweetheart," I muttered. "Whatever the truth may be, I shall." Confronting the reality for both of us, I retrieved my phone and initiated a call I had been evading. "Daisy, this is Grace. I believe it is appropriate for us to converse regarding what Daisy might disclose. Destabilize the very principles of my understanding of the circumstances surrounding Hannah's death, guiding me towards a trajectory that would." It necessitated every bit of fortitude I had cultivated throughout my healing journey, yet this time I was not confronting it alone. Daisy was beside me. Agreed to rendezvous with me at a modest diner on the periphery of town. David proposed to accompany me, but this was an endeavor Upon my arrival, she was already present, fidgeting with The coffee cup bears no resemblance to the confident woman depicted in those party photographs. "I have been eager to share everything with you for months," she stated as I took a seat. Her hands quivered as she retrieved her phone. "I own evidence, texts and recordings. I retained them because I could not reconcile with myself if I failed to act upon what Daisy ultimately disclosed." In the subsequent 2 hours, I was horrified to discover that Oliver had not merely been gambling and engaging in an affair. He had been entangled in something more significant. In a convoluted fraud plan involving his family's enterprise. The casino visits served as a facade for meetings with dubious investors. However, it was not the most distressing aspect. Hannah remarked, her voice scarcely audible. Whisper. It was not abrupt. Oliver was aware she exhibited signs months before the event. The school nurse had contacted him numerous times regarding her headaches and episodes of dizziness, which he concealed from you because he feared that the ailing youngster would disrupt his intentions to depart. My coffee cup clattered on the saucer. And he was aware of everything. At that moment, he realized she was unwell. Daisy nodded, tears in her eyes, reflecting on life. The insurance policy was not solely a financial matter, it also pertained to timing, which he required. Everything was required to appear like a tragic accident. The birthday celebration served merely as an alibi he never intended to return to. The hospital symbolized a turning point in time, bringing back memories of Hannah's migraines and Oliver's disregarded them as attention-seeking. All the school activities he had missed, citing non-existent business emergencies, abandoned us in our time of need. He had deliberately concealed Hannah's deteriorating health to further his own interests. Daisy persisted in sliding her phone across the table. These are recordings of dialogues between Oliver and his girlfriend Vanessa, the casino hostess. They intended to exploit Hannah's death as a pretext for the missing funds, as everyone would be preoccupied with the incident. A grieving father will observe the embezzlement as I listen to fragments of the tapes with my hand placed against them. My mouth articulated Oliver's voice, which was both easygoing and cunning. As we discussed our daughter's situation, he remarked in one recording that illness was perceived as only another economic opportunity once the children were gone. Grace will be too devastated to inquire. We will have a fresh start. Why are you presenting this to me now? I requested it. Daisy, with a hoarse voice, wiped her eyes because Oliver intends to return. The scheme collapsed. His family uncovered the theft. Vanessa abandoned him for another individual. And he is himself in a precarious situation. He is discussing rectifying matters with you, unaware that I have retained documentation of everything since I departed the diner a few days ago. Having scarcely recollected the journey to Aurora's residence, my sister observed my expression and promptly ushered me indoors as I narrated. Aurora's countenance transitioned from amazement to fury upon hearing all Daisy had conveyed to me. She asserted that I must see the police and inform them about my ex-husband. They indirectly facilitated our daughter's demise by concealing her symptoms, intending to utilize her death as a pretext. His crimes are reprehensible, yet, are they illegal? Embezzlement is fraud. If he was aware of her illness and intentionally denied her medical attention. I slept that night on Aurora's couch. At midnight, my thoughts were racing, so I called David, who listened attentively as I spoke. Everything then articulated a sentiment that penetrated my turmoil. Grace, over these months, you have assisted others in recovering from their losses. Perhaps it is now time to aid yourself by revealing the truth. The following morning, I proceeded to work as per normal, where I had a session with Sophie, who was now, as I observed her resolute advancement while walking with merely a cane. I reflected on Hannah and the several indications we had overlooked. Regarding the betrayal that was beyond my expectations, I made 2 calls during my lunch break. The first was to an investigator in the Financial Crimes Unit was sent to investigate Oliver's family's company, particularly focusing on his brother, Elijah, whom I knew had consistently harbored suspicions regarding Oliver's activities. During the evening, while seated in my support group circle, I disclosed something I had never previously acknowledged, stating, for sometimes, healing involves not only accepting loss but also confronting painful truths and deciding to take action based on them. Regardless of the potential challenges that may arise later at home, I discovered an old photo album. Remained unopened since Hannah's demise. It contained a photograph of her during her final school picnic, slightly squinting in the sunlight pressed against her temple, which I now identified as pain, while Oliver stood behind her. His smile failed to reach his eyes, which were mentally disengaged from our lives. My phone vibrated with a message from an unidentified number. Grace. It is Oliver. I have returned to town. We must converse. I wish to rectify the situation. I gazed at the message for an extended period, contemplating Daisy's revelations regarding the information she offered regarding the components that had ultimately aligned prompted my response. Yes. We do. I need to discuss something important. Oliver was unaware that our forthcoming conversation would not proceeding as he intended. The truth inevitably asserts itself, and I was ultimately prepared to articulate it, not just for myself, for Hannah, and for every parent who has been misled by someone they relied upon for protection. I opted to meet Oliver at a cafe adjacent to the police station. A detail: David and Aurora were situated at separate tables, sufficiently distanced to provide us with maintaining privacy while remaining sufficiently enough to intercede if necessary. Detective Russell and his partner were also in proximity, awaiting my signal. Upon Oliver's entrance, I scarcely recognized him. The confident swagger was vanished, supplanted by a frightened expression. Costly suits had been supplanted by creased khakis and an untucked shirt. He had lost weight, and his eyes exhibited the glassy sheen I recalled from his most dismal gaming days. He remarked, was sinking in. The individual seated opposite me appears remarkable. It is astonishing what healing can accomplish. Responded with a firm voice. Though I assume you are unaware of that. He recoiled but continued. I know I understand that I can never atone for my absence when Hannah needed me. His voice trembled as he spoke. I have been undergoing therapy and am making progress. I seek assistance with gaming. I merely wish to elucidate my situation concerning Oliver. How could you ascertain our daughter's illness months prior to her collapse? Why did you conceal the school nurse's communications? Discuss the life insurance policy you acquired just before the exacerbation of her symptoms. As the color drained from his face, confronting him, I inquired how Daisy maintained her records, observing his complexion grow increasingly ashen. All recordings of your talks with Vanessa, the emails concerning the embezzlement, and the text messages regarding the matter, utilizing our daughter's demise as a pretext for your machinations. Grace, please. He extended his hand towards. I withdrew my hand. It was not as it seemed. I was in a bleak situation due to gaming. The debt rendered me unable to think clearly, while you maintained sufficient clarity to meticulously arrange and calculate everything precisely. My sorrow would prevent me from inquiring whether our daughter's life was worth sacrificing for your renewal. His gaze flickered toward the door. I never wished for Hannah's demise. However, you must. I believe the physicians indicated that even if we had detected it sooner, we would never know, would we? I interrupted him because you created. He made that decision for her and for all of us. Incarceration is not an option for me. Desperation infiltrating his voice. My family remains unaware of the complete magnitude I spoke with Elijah yesterday. And Oliver's expression conveyed his distress. You had no right. I had every right. My voice elevated significantly, attracting attention from others. At adjacent tables, I inhaled deeply to center myself. You know what the most unpleasant aspect is. I have dedicated months to assisting individuals in recovering from loss by educating them about sorrow. Does not have to obliterate you. I have observed parents discover resilience they were previously unaware of. And throughout this period, I was enduring the burden of your treachery without fully comprehending its extent. He implored, we can negotiate a resolution. I will do anything. I have some savings. Is this what you believe is about money? I retrieved my phone and, upon activating one of Daisy's recordings, Oliver's voice permeated the area between us after the child had departed. Grace will be too distraught to inquire. He lunged for the phone. But I was already up, which served as the signal. Detective Russell approached our table, with his partner, Oliver Anderson, closely following. We require your presence with us. What ensued was a haze of activity. Oliver's escape attempt was swiftly impeded as the detectives escorted him away, and I had a final look at his face, which was neither angry nor defiant yet shattered, akin to a guy who has ultimately exhausted all his stratagems. David. He appeared beside me, his hand firmly resting on my shoulder, while Aurora hurried over from her location. The table, encircling me in a vigorous embrace, simultaneously asked, "Are you well?" "No," I replied. I responded truthfully. But later that evening, I visited Hannah's cemetery. The spring flowers I had planted were in full bloom, forming a vibrant carpet of purple and yellow, her preferred colors. I accomplished it. "Baby girl," I said, caressing the soft stone. "I discovered the truth. And I hope, regardless of your location, you take pride in your mother." A little breeze stirred the blossoms, marking the first occasion since. Upon discovering the complete truth of Oliver's betrayal, I had a tremendous sense of tranquility, not joy, as the wound remained unhealed. Too recent for that, however. It appeared that the affirmation of Hannah's death was not the straightforward tragedy I had assumed. But nevertheless, confronting the truth directly has, in some way, fortified my resilience toward my phone. Received a message from Sophie's mother indicating that she walked 10 steps today without the cane. She expressed a desire to possess strength akin to yours. Tears obscured my sight as I perused the message on my assistance in facilitating others' healing. I discovered my own route to recovery. Oliver's betrayal had almost annihilated me. Yet it also guided me to my ultimate destiny. As I drove home, I reflected on the myriad twists and turns that had led me here. At this moment, the members of the mourning group, who have become like family, along with Sophie and my other patients, impart daily lessons to me. Resilience, exemplified by David, whose enduring affection demonstrated that trust remains attainable. I didn't realize at the time that Oliver's imprisonment would set off a series of consequential events, leaving the narrative unfinished, that would evaluate my newly acquired strength in unforeseen manners and compel me to make one final pivotal decision about the authentic essence of justice and rehabilitation. During the months subsequent to Oliver's imprisonment was characterized by a tumultuous series of judicial proceedings. Emotional revelations emerged as his family's firm filed accusations for misappropriation based on the information presented by Daisy. Was essential not only the recordings but also years of recorded fraud that occurred, significantly more profound than anyone had anticipated. I attended the courthouse at his punishment not out of retribution, but seeking closure. Oliver appeared more mature than his age as he stood before the judge. His fancy outfits substituted by department store attire draped loosely on his physique. "Your Honor," he stated during his testimony, ultimately confronting I lost everything of significance because I was unable to confront my own demons. My daughter perished while I was scheming to exploit her demise for my personal advantage. No penalty could equate to the harm I have inflicted upon my family, as determined by the judge's sentencing him to 12 years for the financial offenses. The evidence regarding Hannah's concealed illness, albeit not legally illegal, The judge, Mr. Anderson, stated in the judgment that the court cannot impose a penalty you for ethical shortcomings, although it is evident that your conduct concerning your daughter's health illustrates a. The court considers the callousness exhibited by reporters outside the courthouse profoundly troubling regarding statements about the remarkable case, the bereaved mother, the deceitful father, the awful demise of an. I declined interviews with the innocent youngster because I didn't want this to make headlines. The evening was centered around seeking tranquility during dinner with David at our preferred restaurant. "I've been contemplating," he remarked. "My heart raced as you extended your hand across the table." Referencing the Chicago project, David smiled. "I was about to suggest another option. An IT architect is someone who genuinely desires to reside in Chicago for 6 months. Your career is progressing well, in fact." He paused to retrieve his. "I would like to present a concept I have been developing for a new pediatric rehabilitation and counseling facility. Dr. Rodriguez believes we may secure funds from several foundations." He presented the blueprints for an exquisite edifice. Spaces abundant in natural light were planned for both physical rehabilitation and mental healing, including a dancing area. The dance studio was Sophie's concept, he acknowledged, as she stated it was a kind of healing. "The venue requires a space where individuals can express their emotions via dancing." Tears filled my eyes as I observed the intricate details you provided. He softly mentioned the inclusion of a memorial garden for Hannah and for all others. Children whose narratives merit remembrance. What are your thoughts? I inhaled deeply. I believe it is ideal. Life has a tendency to complete a cycle. A year following Oliver's imprisonment, we commenced construction on the new center, with Sophie now walking independently and engaging in volunteer work. Assisted younger patients in planting the inaugural tree in the memorial garden established by my grief support group. Comprehensive program featuring specialized programs for parents, children, and families confronting loss through betrayal. I stood at the stage on the center's inauguration day, surveying the assembled crowd. Aurora sat in the first row, grinning, while David stood at the back, giving me a thumbs up. In the audience were familiar faces. Become acquainted with members of the patient support group and medical experts. Become allies in the healing process. Someone once informed me that sadness lacks a rulebook. I realized that we are all merely striving. Finding our way back to life manifests differently for each individual. This center transcends mere physical structure. A monument to the reality that our most profound hurts can provide our greatest purpose. Following the service I attended, the memorial garden, where Hannah's tomb is located, was exquisite, but this will forever remain my cherished location for connection. I arranged fresh flowers with her and sat on the small bench that David had assisted me in installing. "You would be 12 now," I murmured quietly. "Old enough for point shoes in ballet. Old enough to roll your eyes when I attempt to assist with arithmetic homework." I grinned throughout. "I hope you understand that what I have constructed and all I have become commenced with you. Your life, however brief, generated waves of restoration that." I received a text from Maria, another mother, while continuing to engage with others. Our support group had ultimately discovered the fortitude to extricate her and her children from the terrible environment. They required a secure refuge. Prior to Oliver's arrest, I may have hesitated. Feeling inundated by others' suffering prompted me to understand precisely how to proceed that evening when David and I hosted a. Sophie and her mother attended a modest dinner gathering with Aurora and her family. We sat in my lawn observing the sunset, and I glanced at the individuals who had become my chosen family. Dialogue and laughing transpired effortlessly, interspersed by Sophie's animated discourse. While we cleaned up together, David embraced me from behind, expressing his happiness for her forthcoming dancing presentation. I studied the question thoughtfully and responded calmly. Sadness persists, although it is now interwoven within a larger context. He comprehended something significant, indeed. That is why he inquired. I agreed to marry him 2 months later. My response was effortless. We held a modest wedding in the memorial garden, encircled by flourishing flowers and mending hearts. Included a bouquet that contained Hannah's favorite purple roses, and Sophie acted as our flower girl. Life is not a fairy tale. Happy endings cannot eliminate previous suffering, however. I find myself presently conducting a grief therapy session at the center that. From my profound loss, I have discovered that genuine healing is not about forgetting or moving on, involves translating our wounds into wisdom. The photograph of Hannah remains prominently displayed in my office, symbolizing the transformation of suffering into purpose. Patients frequently inquire about her, and I recount her narrative, encompassing not only the tragedy but also the entirety of her life. Initiated a healing mission that continues to expand, my daughter enlightened me about. Through unconditional love and the loss of her, I discovered profound anguish, recovering from the tragedy by confronting the harsh reality of her father's treachery. I uncovered my intrinsic strength and purpose during moments of tranquility. I can hear the reverberation of her laughing in the corridors of the center. And in those instances, I possess unequivocal confidence. Although certain songs conclude prematurely, their melodies endure in the hearts they have influenced and the lives they have transformed. Forever.